Welcome to Musclebox Radio. I'm your host, Stephen Box, and my co-host is Michael Harrison. This show is going to be all about nutrition, training, bodybuilding, with loads of banter. We're going to be giving you the evidence, the science, and breaking that down with the help of some amazing guests and industry leaders to give you that application. So make sure you subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Musclebox Radio. Michael Harrison, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm great, mate. And we are joined this week by Tom Blackman. Tom, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for asking me to come on the show.
Mate, no, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, I wouldn't say that just yet. I might not say anything good.
Yeah, we might have to re-record this one with someone else.
That's probably a good idea. Get someone in the wings, ready, understudy.
Yeah, I'll bring in Emil.
He can talk about Trent.
Yeah. So, Tom, for the listeners, can you give them a little bit of a quick synopsis about who Tom Blackman is? And then obviously me and Mike can delve into more about, who you are, what you do within bodybuilding, and kind of why we've got you on the show today.
Okay. Well, I started bodybuilding when I was 17. Originally was because I was competing in jiu-jitsu at the time. Back then there wasn't no cage fighting or MMA, and I should mention I'm 36, so this is like 19 years ago. Weren't no UFC or anything. And then I was doing jiu-jitsu competing, so I went to the gym to get stronger, but it was like an old school bodybuilding gym. And like the guys there were massive. Like I thought, this is good. I like this. And I did do my jiu-jitsu competitions. And when I moved to Bristol to go to university, I continued doing the jiu-jitsu with Kevin O'Hagan, and I was bodybuilding as well because I got into weight training a bit. And then it came to a point where I was either going to have to compete in bodybuilding or compete in MMA, and because I'd picked up a few injuries from fighting already, I thought, do you know what? Let's not go down the MMA route, because I'd not like to get any more injuries from being like beaten up and stuff. So I went bodybuilding, and then done my first show when I was 22. I think it was Neil Hill's show in Tenby. Won that, but looked shit. I only won because I was the biggest guy there, really. I don't think I even had abs. And then onwards from that, I just competed every year. And I'd done a few shows with NABBA. Then I went to UKBFF. I've done reasonably well in the UKBFF. I won the overall at the Portsmouth a few times. Beat some bigger guys than me, which was nice. And then I stopped competing about 4 years ago, because I opened my gym in Bristol, which was an absolute nightmare. If anybody who owns a gym will tell you, it's a nightmare opening one. But then I picked up an injury, bench pressing 4 plates aside, which was great because it put a disc out my spine, and I lost pretty much all the muscle in my right side. So 4 years later, managed to build it back up again, and then me and Paul Scarborough, who's my best mate, decided we were going to film a documentary about our return, because he hadn't competed for 4 years. So that, and then we filmed Prep, which we released last year, which was reasonably good. People gave some good feedback, and we certainly didn't expect it to be any good, but it was good. And that's where I am now.
And where did you finish that competition you prepped for?
Well, last year we'd done the NABBA Britain, and I came second, which we in class 4, which I was really surprised at, because my target was to get top 6 that year, because I hadn't competed for nearly 5 years, and I nearly forgot how to pose properly. But both me and Paul did that show. We'd done the qualifiers, and then we'd done that show. And unfortunately, Paul didn't get top 6, which was really sort of gutting for us on the day, because I wanted to be on stage with him for his last show, and I wasn't really, apart from the prejudging. So that was a bit upsetting, but it was good for the camera, good for the series, but I know Paul was not happy about it. But still, from my point of view, getting second was good.
Mate, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I lost to Paul. I can't remember his name now. Irish guy, but he looked absolutely awesome, and I think he won the universe that year. So, and he won the British final. So, that was good.
Yeah, that's not bad taking second to Mr. Universe, is it?
Yeah, it was all right, but obviously I couldn't claim to be at Mr. Universe level. But yeah, that's what I tell people.
No, that's great, Tom. And obviously, I met you at the ISSN weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously I'd been to your gym kind of infrequently with friends or whatever. Is a place to kind of check out in the area because it's, from my perspective, I grew up in Melksham and then obviously living in Bath. Yeah, obviously a lot of things were said about your gym, and going there was quite a nice little treat, really. So, it was obviously fantastic to get you on the show, and it was a nice surprise to see you on the ISSN weekend.
I think we missed each other about 4 or 5 times at the gym because we were... Yeah. You messaged me about training, and we were like, yeah, and we just kept... And I think, actually, you come into the gym, and I didn't recognise you the one day.
Yeah, you blanked me, mate. Completely blanked me. Yeah.
Well, you were small. Like that, he's just don't talk to sometimes. Can't skull.
Well, I'm trying to grow, but you know the challenges. I'm hitting my BCAs at 11 grams a dose, and just getting there.
12, mate. That's what you want. 12 grams. That's the optimum.
Yeah.
You're fucking up, Steve.
Well, I know. So it was funny, really, and actually a bit of a surprise to obviously see you at the ISSN, because I just assumed you were a big bro, Tom. And I wouldn't be too far from the truth, would I?
No. Do you know what? I tell you what. 2 years ago, or maybe 3, I probably was proper bro, and I've always wanted to. Know like how things work and all the little secrets on how to do this better than everybody else. So I did read a lot about bodybuilding, and I researched gear for 2 years before I did it, just to make sure I didn't mess myself up. And so I've always gone into reading and researching, but obviously when I was growing up, there weren't no real internet. 18, 19, I think it was just about the internet was just about coming on to being sort of mainstream then. There certainly weren't no Facebook or anything when I was younger, so I had to read like Muscle and Fitness and Flex and stuff like that, and they're not peer-reviewed journals, so that's where I got a lot of my information from when I was a kid or a young adult.
How did you troll people back then, mate?
Just went into the park and just threw stones at people's windows until they opened them and started abusing them.
So now that you've sort of done a bit more research, and you're obviously studying on the ISSN and things like that, and you mentioned that your show before the last one was 4 years ago. How then have you sort of applied what you've maybe adapted? How do those preps differ from, say, 4, 5, 6 years ago to the one you've just done now?
Well, it was the last prep I did before the one last year was when I just opened the gym, and I was already prepping for that show when we opened, because if people want to know, there's on the website a whole stuff that went on with, I won't bore people, but it's just utter crap, the stuff they put us through. It was illegal and all sorts, but we had massive delays, like about 9-month delay opening, so I thought we'd be open by the time, and by the time I competed and everything else, but we just about opened. I think we'd opened for about 6 months. Then I started competing for the show, and it was just a nightmare because I had not a lot of money after opening the gym, because me and my partner put pretty much all our money into it, and then I couldn't afford staff, so I was working on the desk the night before the British finals. So I had to work at the gym, finish, and then drive up to Nottingham at 11 o'clock at night to do the show. And suffice to say, I look shit. So
fair amount of stress.
Yeah, it wasn't good. That show was, and I knew it didn't look good, but I'm with the mindset that I'm going to go. I've dieted. I'll go and everything else. But it weren't good. I didn't look good. I didn't look my best, which was really annoying. But that diet was quite I suppose quite bro if you look at it, because it was, I was eating chicken and broccoli and cauliflower, and maybe some carrots if I was on a high day, and that was basically it for the whole day. I went some oats in the morning,
Yeah, I think you can class that as bro.
It was 100%, and and I was doing my cardio at like 5 in the morning before the gym opened, and I mean that was probably about the hardest diet I've ever done because of working as well.
Yeah.
But then last year when I competed, because I had all the knowledge I got from properly studying nutrition and not just what I'd read in Flex, I was able to manipulate my diet a bit better, add in things like, I had a flapjack every day if I was really low, and I would obviously count that into my calories and everything else, and all that stuff. I actually looked better, and I was looked better further out than I did the couple of years before when I was like nailing chicken and broccoli 5 times a day.
Yeah. So would you say that you followed more of a flexible dieting approach the last time round?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those sort of things. People, when you say flexible dieting, people go, oh, weigh out your shoestring laces and stuff like that. But it was flexible because I would have certain amount of calories in the day, and I'd obviously meet my protein requirements and I'd meet my fat requirements and stuff like that, and then I'd just manipulate my carbs to sort of fit in with that or whatever day I was on. So because I'm one of those people that if I get a craving for a cheat, I'm very bad at resisting that. I've got a certain amount of willpower, but sometimes I'm just going to nail that and bollocks. I'm just going to eat that and I'm going to go and train harder, that's a bro thing to do. But I much feel better after eating a flapjack. I can go and train 10 times harder than having a piece of chicken. So that's what I did. I just incorporated that into my diet.
But
so I knew I could do it.
You also can't out-train a 7,000 calorie binge, though, can you? So it's just having that balance of thinking, rather than just having that one big cheat meal, it's a case of, incorporating a flapjack into your calorie requirements. You're going to see progress, and you can undulate how you feel then, and that's essentially what flexible dieting is. Sticking to the principles of good wholesome food, but then having these other foods that you don't demonize. You don't look at that flapjack being bad or dirty. It's a case of, no, it's actually going to help me prevent binges, or it's going to help me train that little bit harder, maybe reduce the sort of RPE of that session slightly, and also it means you can just enjoy a coffee with it, or if you're in a social environment, right? So it's that's absolutely right, because and do you know what the ironic thing is after the show, myself and Paul and one of my other friends, Lindsay Bruce, we went up to Go Performance in London, and we had an RMR test done, and it was weird because my RMR come out at 3,200 calories, like as in that's the calories I need just to function every day with my muscle mass, and I was only having 3,000 calories a day on my actual diet, so I could have eaten 2 flapjacks. So I'm gutted about that. Well, mate, now next time with the use of science, you can have more flapjacks.
I can have a box a day and just train it out.
Yeah.
It was enlightening to see, but I liked some of the science stuff. Some of it is I think over-sciencing sometimes, but things like the RMR test does give you a good idea about where you are calorie-wise. And it was interesting to see because my calories were 3,200, and Paul, who is arguably same as me, he's the same height. Well, okay, he's a half an inch taller. Weight, muscle mass, all that, everything else. But his calories come out of 2,700, so there's about 500 difference. Yeah. But looking at us, you would think they must have the same calorie requirements.
Yeah.
And he was more fat-based, and I was more carbohydrate-based.
Yeah.
So that was unusual as well.
I think, the science part is interesting, isn't it? Because when you start to go down to that level of testing, obviously it can become quite expensive for, I'd say general public who just want to lose a little bit of weight. But obviously, serious competitors, if you're looking at RMR testing, or if you're looking for, a DEXA scan to actually accurately measure body comp, they're not too far from, some decent measures of being able to apply some, solid nutritional strategies for. Yeah, I think, potentially going down the route of getting muscle biopsies to look at muscle protein synthesis within a 24-hour period might be a little bit too excessive, but...
you have to lose your muscle. No way.
Exactly. It'd take you 6 months. Well, it'd take me 2 years to gain back what I lost in a muscle biopsy.
They won't be able to find any, mate, on you.
Well, be like...
Pull out some bone.
Steve, that's bone. Yeah, we can test your bone mineral density here, though. No, that's quality, Tom. What would be? I also know you went on the Mac Nutrition mentorship weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, that was really good. Because I've always liked Martin's stuff. I've heard him on podcasts and years and years ago there was an old forum called ukmuscle.com, I think, and Martin, I think, was on that, and me and Paul and a few others were on that. And I think there was a lot of information there, which I read through various things. So I was quite keen to go on the weekend to learn from him. Really, he's one of the most respected nutritionists in the country. So yeah, it was great. And Paul come along, and Emil come along, and it was a really good laugh actually. We learned tons, and it was applied stuff as well.
Yeah.
Which was really relevant to what I'm doing with my own nutrition consultancy, is to set up something that can be applied to people and not just a load of here's a cookie cutter diet, have that and you'll lose weight. So yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed it.
So Tom, we've got some questions. I put out on my Facebook page earlier. Did anyone have any questions?
Right, yeah, I noticed Paul put some questions on.
Yeah, so Mr. Paul Scarborough says, how does he feel about people thinking he is the same age as me?
Do you know what? That really annoys me, because Paul's like almost 20 years older than me, and people say, "Oh yeah, are you like in the same class at school?" Or I was like, "What? The guy is obviously old, and I am not obviously old." But saying that, I think. But if you see pictures of me before I opened the gym about 6 years ago,
you had hair, didn't you?
I had hair. It wasn't grey, and I didn't look as though the world was on my shoulders. And then a couple of years later, just like I've had some really decrepit illness, which has made me 20 years older. Because the scars of time are there.
Is that because you're dealing with all the bros?
I don't know about that. I think I do in my daily job at the gym. I do get hassled constantly by knobs phoning up trying to sell me stuff. And originally, when I first opened, I would be polite and blah 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 and be really nice. No, I'm not interested in that crap you're selling. Goodbye. But it's endless. It's every day about 3 or 4 calls, and then obviously dealing with the rigors of business and money and all that sort of stuff. I think it does take its toll on you in terms of your stress levels. So maybe that's why I look as old as Paul, but I'm certainly not as old as him.
And then Ollie has said, who benches more, Tom or Paul?
Well, this is ironic because Paul, I think, has got a shoulder injury at the moment, so he's not benching a lot. And I actually don't bench anymore because when I prolapsed my disc in my C6, C7, that was from benching 4 plates, which was a totally retarded thing to do, seeing as I don't normally bench press. But I was training with one of my mates, and we were like, oh, let's do bench press. We hadn't done it for a little while, and then that not doing it in a little while, and then benching 4 plates, just a retarded thing to do. And if I was one of my clients, I would have just said, you're a retard for doing that. So yeah, so we don't bench, so I don't know who benches more.
Well, that solved that question then. So we got another question from a guy called Marcus. He said, I would love to know what is the worst bit of bodybuilding advice he had ever been given and then proceeded to follow.
Wow, there's so much. I don't know. It's the I would say there's not one that stands out in my mind, but I have done probably every bro thing that has ever been invented. So I've done fasted cardio. I've done chicken and broccoli for a week to try and lose weight. Actually, yeah, in 2005 when I was getting ready for the UK BFF British, I was overweight. I think I was in the under 80s, and I was 82 kilos, and nothing I was doing was getting it off. So I spoke to someone who remained nameless, and they said to me, "Do you know what? Just eat protein all week, and that will drop the weight off." And I did. I ate chicken and broccoli for about 2 days before I thought, "Do you know what? Fuck this. I'll just go in the under 90s." And I put carbs back in, and actually I dropped the weight. So that's probably one of the most retarded things I've done, or followed the advice of. Because now, if someone said that to me, "I'll eat protein all week," I would just laugh in their face. But back in 2005, that was considered knowledge. Whereas now...
knowledge.
Well, yeah, no, that's cutting edge, just... Yeah, but I've done loads of other stupid things, with regard to drug cycles and stuff like that. But, that's probably the thing that stands out in terms of the nutrition side of things.
All right, and then I'm going to flip that one. I said, what's the worst advice you've ever given?
Wow, there's so much.
But this is exactly it. Like, me and Mike have spoke before about, like, I used to be pretty paleo for my sins. I thought that was cool. And Mike, you first, when you first ever worked with me, you were pretty keto, Mike, weren't you?
Oh, fucking hell, I've done everything. I was at the time I started working with you, I think I was intermittent fasting whilst doing a keto diet on like 1,800 calories. And then, dreadful.
And then probably just become a vegan as well, that would help.
Yeah.
But, well, I suppose with I've always, let's sort of preempt this with, I've always had the best interests of my clients in my mind. So I've never knowingly, which I know a lot of people do, a lot of bro guru people, whatever you want to call them, they do things which they know are unhealthy for their clients, and they know that's going to cause them harm, but to get them in condition or whatever, they'll do it. I've never done that. I've never thought, "Do you know what? This guy's paying me money. If he doesn't get ripped, I'm going to lose respect on social media, so I'm just going to give him 30 clen a day, and that will get the shreds on, or have some speed or something like that, which I know does happen."
Yeah.
I've always, when I've given out advice to clients, it's always what I've thought to be in their best interest. But now, obviously, years on, as knowledge has progressed, I've known that some things, like, eating chicken and broccoli 3 times a day is not the best advice. But I would say at the time, I thought that I was helping them get where they needed to be. Yeah. So I have done bro things, but I've never been extreme with clients. I've never, and especially on the drug side of things, because I obviously work with people who are assisted and they compete in assisted shows. I've always, on that side of things, said, look, I'd much rather not push any anabolic side of things or any fat burner side of things. I'd much rather push the diet. So I've always been in that respect, but then sometimes the nutrition side of things, when I've been less educated, has not been great.
Yeah, and that it shows a sign of a good practitioner to be able to actually evolve in their knowledge. Yeah, rather than kind of sitting in a position of authority because you might be big and shredded, which you are, Tom. And but it's very, no, I think for your off season, mate, you are. Yeah, you've still got like striations on your triceps, so I won't be too worried, mate. But yeah, a lot of coaches I see, they sit in this authoritative position, and what will happen is that their client will learn a little bit, and they're probably interested in fitness and nutrition and wanting to improve, and they might come to them with a question of, "Oh, so what do you think on me having this much protein at a meal? Is that kind of optimal?" And they'll be like, "Just shut up and do what I say." And actually, it's kind of that. I don't know. It's whether because they don't know the answer, or it's because they feel threatened by a question that they're unsure of. Obviously there's that point of a coach to steer the ship, and sometimes you don't want, too much knowledge can maybe upset the apple cart. But I think we always have that same mentality of let's try and educate our clients enough so that they can make good decisions. So if going off that, then Tom, what would you look for in a good bodybuilding coach? If people are listening to this show, and obviously, yeah, you've sort of said that you work with a lot of clients who compete, and I've seen some of the guys that you've prepped, and they've got into fantastic shape. And so, what would you look for in a coach? What should people look for?
Well, I suppose years ago, it would have been to me, has that guy won anything? Has he got in condition himself and got on stage? And although that's sort of still relevant in what I would look for, because I would want to work with someone who could relate to what I was going to be going through. So someone who has never competed, for example, will never know the hardship of sitting at home at 7 o'clock at night, no more food left in the diet for that day, and thinking, God, I just got to eat something, and that sort of mentality and how to get around that, as you've said before about, okay, I'll take some calories from my next day and put it into that meal just to give me something to eat. So I'd look for a bodybuilding coach, if I was going to be prep myself, someone who, first of all, can get themselves into a reasonable condition, so knows sort of what I'm going to be going through and can relate to me on that level.
Yeah. Someone
who has a plan. So when you sit down with them for the first time, it's not just talk about maybe what they've done and blah, blah. It's about how can we work with you? How can we do this for you? Someone who takes what I say to them and then feeds it back to me. When I done neurolinguistic programming ages ago, there was a thing in it called active listening, and you find a lot of coaches that you see online, if their client tells them they like something to eat, they'll just go, no, don't eat that. You've got to eat this. You've got to eat everything I say, and it doesn't help with compliance. So I always, with my clients, say, right, here's a list. Put down everything you like to eat, and then I incorporate as much of that into a prep as I can. Obviously, chocolate cake is probably not going to be there a lot, but there's other things you can incorporate in to keep that person sane on the diet.
Yeah.
And then finally, someone who isn't just the first conversation is, right, how much Glen can you take? That's probably important as well, because I'm not really, if you watch prep, I'm not really into overdose and drugs a lot, and I don't really like using drugs, but I use it for what I want to get to. And any coach that works for me would have to be of the mentality, okay, you're in an assisted federation, so yeah, that's going to come into it, but it's never right. Okay, the diet's not working. Let's up the trend.
Yeah, a little bit like the minimum dose effect.
Yeah, exactly. It's I see a lot of clients who come to me and they show me what they've been on before, and you just think, how did you get that much gear into you? That's a lot. And they didn't look very good when they used that. So obviously something else was lacking in that department.
Yeah, and it's I think when bodybuilding, and maybe we kind of take things for granted the more you compete, and it'd be great to sort of quiz that out of you. I think Mike's obviously competed twice before, but this will be Mike's second season, so I'm sure he'll have some good questions. But I think a lot of the conversations I have with my first time competitors is that I'm always about, the sport of bodybuilding is more than just how conditioned you can get, or it's more than just how big can you be. And there is that appreciation for actually the aesthetics, proportions, the muscle balance, the overall symmetry and size, but then also having an element of condition which is suited to that federation in class, but then able to pose that on stage, and even down to the point of stage tactics. Are you always facing the judges? Are you under the sections where there's good lighting and not hidden in darkness? Are you trying to edge your way into the center of a stage? But all these things are so important, and the more someone competes, the better they get at that. But it's often the case that when I work with someone new, they're like, yeah, but am I going to be lean enough? And I'm like, yeah, you're lean enough, just practice posing. They're like, yeah, okay, but am I going to be lean enough? That's all they care about. So it'll be great to maybe get your, sort of expertise a little bit on kind of what should people be focusing on, perhaps in their off-season, in their training, what can help them throughout an off-season into a prep. And then also, some of those other finite pieces of posing, or what advice you'd give. So we can probably do that after the break if you're keen for that, Tom.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, well, we'll take a quick break and we will be back in a minute.
Okay.
So welcome back from the break. Again, huge thanks to our sponsors, MuscleFood, who supply us with some great goodies. And just providing the team with some support. And they're also helping out with our Team Box retreat at the end of the month, which is going to be pretty sweet. There could be talks of another little company helping us out as well. But Mike, I'll have to tell you about that privately. But it's good news. I only found out about that today. Anyway, so without further ado, Tom, obviously thanks for the first half. It's great to go over some of those aspects in to really get your kind of expertise over the years of bodybuilding and seeing how you've progressed and the things that you've done within the documentary of prep and stuff and some of the things you spoke about. So off air then, we were kind of just talking about the how great it'd be to kind of hear Tom talk about the difference between a natural athlete and an assisted athlete and some things that, considerations. I often get clients who come to me who have maybe worked with an assisted coach before and they're just not in a great place because they just generally feel quite beaten up, even if they are obviously not assisted themselves and they've been given a training program which is essentially probably cookie cutter there was no thought process, no periodization, no planning for that individuality like you spoke about, Tom. So, in terms of training, where do some of the differences lie?
I've got a lot of clients who are PT in the gym, and actually the majority of them are natural athletes. It's funny, a few people come to me saying, "Oh, Tom, I'd like to do some PTing, but I'm not really interested in competing or anything else." I'm like, "Well, actually, I only have a couple of clients to compete, and most of my clients are natural people, so I get that side of it a lot more than, say, the training the assistant athlete. But like you said, it's the recovery aspect of it. I would say because years ago I was natural once, and I used to train in that bodybuilding gym, which was a really hardcore gym
for a day.
When I was 17, and those guys, I didn't realise at the time because I was only a kid, but those guys were smack on the juice and which is and I didn't realise that they were big, and that's what I wanted to aspire to. So I tried to train like them, and because I thought, if you want to get that big, that's how you got to train. And I almost killed myself trying to do stuff they were doing. And obviously years later, I realised that they were using whatever so they could do that. So my clients now, I think the rest period is really important. I know different trainers have different ideas about doing things, and I'm not saying one way is better than the other. Yeah. But when I've pushed clients to say, right, let's do this set, this set, and then let's have 30 seconds rest, do this set, they don't enjoy the session, and maybe they enjoy the challenge of it, but towards the end you can see in their eyes it's like, you know what, this is a bit too hard, and but just by extending the rest period by about 30 seconds to a minute, so you got about a minute to 2 minutes in between sets, allows them to push harder, allows them to get more out themselves, and they appreciate the sessions more. And I've noticed since by doing that, there's a couple of things that have happened. First of all, I've actually retained more clients, which is very important, and secondly, that the clients are getting more results. And that seems a bit counterintuitive. You think, well, if you've got to push them as hard as they can and make them sick into a bucket and make them work for it, balls to the wall, blah, 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 they're going to enjoy that and they're going to come back for it. But actually not. It's you've got to have an adequate rest period, and you've got to have an adequate, obviously, nutrition plan as well. But the guys I train now, by just dropping the rest period a little bit, they do get more out of it. And I've found that, especially training a natural athlete, that's the main thing, is recovery.
Yeah.
They can train hard, but they need the recovery.
Definitely. Because obviously you recover a little bit, and we talked about how recovery is a lot better when you're assisted, and recovery is a massive importance. And if you just find that you do, and I found this in my training, that you recover just that slightly longer between sets, and obviously you're going to be able to move a greater load, with greater form, for the remainder of the session. Whereas you go full fucking throttle for the first set, do all the drop sets, and you can't lift anything towards the back end of a workout. And, your load's gone down, your form's dreadful.
Terrible range.
Yeah, terrible range. And obviously the volume then for that session, the effective volume probably isn't as great as if you would have just backed off and recovered slightly. And then that can have a knock-on effect to the second session in the week. Let's say you're training, I don't know, your legs twice in a week. What's the chances in that second session that you're going to be going in fully recovered if you've absolutely smashed them in the first session? Probably not a great deal, especially if you're unassisted.
I think the other thing to remember is that, and this is something I've learned just recently, and I think there's some studies now that have come out and showing this, is that you only need to train to a certain trigger point to then trigger the mTOR, science, etc., pathway. If you go over that, as in, you really push yourself and do this extreme type training that you see a lot of people doing, well, you've already triggered that mTOR reaction. So you're then almost over triggering it, which is not necessary. You've already caused the body to have that adaptation protocol, and then you're pushing it even further. I remember listening to a really good podcast on group performance, is the Keith Barr one, and he was talking about he doesn't push his professional athletes to the maximum they can do, because he only needs to push them to the level where they can get adaptations and get the recovery factors. But any more than that is increasing the injury risk. And I think that's something that really needs to be remembered. It's okay to train hard, and I train this way because some pro bodybuilder trains that way. But if you're pushing the injury envelope too much after you've already done enough to make the body recover and grow, well, what's the point of that apart from satisfying your own ego?
Yeah. So it's a bell curve, isn't it? It's a bell curve model.
Yeah.
It's that point, where you're going to get that return. And I think a big part of the problem is that, like you said, that you watch bodybuilders on YouTube or see these flex routines, and you think that this is how these bodybuilders are training all the time. And you're going to put that into a clip on YouTube, aren't you? You're going to put in those drop sets. Because nobody wants to see you sat around resting for fucking 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So the natural guys, the guys who are new to training are going in thinking that I've got to be like this YouTube video, and essentially you end up getting nowhere.
Well, yeah, or injured, get into hospital.
Yeah.
I recently listened to a debate on, it was the, I think, minimum dose response. So what's the least, is it better to go down the approach of what is the least amount you can get away with to see a result, or what is the most, or should you train with the most that you can possibly get away with and recover from? And I think, and I think probably, as we've kind of alluded to, somewhere down the middle is probably what's maybe more advantageous. You get the point where, you're just going to creep over that line of what you can essentially see an adaptation from, because it's certainly very easy not to do anything in the gym. I see a lot of people going to the gym, there's terrible form, there's terrible range, they're not lifting enough load because they're trying to do too many supersets or drop sets in there, they're with leg pressing one plate aside or whatever it might be. I'm just kind of using that as an example, but when actually they probably could have done 3 or 4 plates aside if they just took a little bit longer rest periods.
It's definitely I think there's, like Mike said, it's a bell curve, and unfortunately when you go into an argument, you said about earlier about Facebook, which is something I'm sort of into, but you get people on, it's always this one end or the other. It's you either train like how Dorian did, just for an example, balls to the wall, explosive, blah blah blah, failure. You either train like that or you're a pussy. And there is this straw man argument, because whenever you say, well, look, you don't have to train that intense, that Dorian was genetically able to do that, and was able to train that hard and intensely, but it doesn't mean that, so that means I can just lift 5 kilos aside on curls and just do 1,000,000 reps and I'll grow the same. Well, no, it's not like that. But that's the argument you always come up against, is that if you're not training all out to failure and thrown up in a sick bucket, you're not working hard enough, which is, complete rubbish.
Yeah, it can be quite hard to coach as well, because I think sometimes clients come back and say, I don't feel like I'm working hard enough, and it's sort of hard to sort of instill that, that they are working hard enough. We're covering off the volume. We're making progressive gains throughout the weeks. Through good periodization, and it can be hard to sort of get these people to back off, and it is hard to coach because of what you see every day in the gym and on the videos, and like you said, just through people having that all or nothing sort of mindset in terms of it's got to be done this way or anything else does not work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's many ways to skin a cat. Obviously that's an old saying, but yeah, there's loads of ways you can do things, and but unfortunately you get people who are so stuck in their ways they won't change, and trying to have a discussion with those people is very difficult. But then on the other side, there are people who train like absolute pussies and just take gear because they train like a pussy. So those people aren't very good either.
Yeah. So go on, Mike.
Yeah, I just think it's testament to you, Tom, that obviously, because what you said that you've come from maybe sort of a bro background, and you obviously did see impressive results from that, and it takes a big person to sort of maybe critically evaluate what they've been doing, even with the results that you've had, and say maybe I could tweak things, or maybe I could just change things up. You talked about your nutrition being different in the last prep, and because it must be a hard thing to do when you're seeing those results, and you must feel that I'm doing everything bang on. But as we know, you can always make improvements, and obviously as we're finding out more through research, it takes a good coach and a good bodybuilder to sort of adapt with the times rather than being stuck in the dark ages.
Well, yeah, and I think what is lacking in some coaches, not everyone, because there are some really good coaches out there, and I've subscribed to a few of them on like Instagram and whatever, and I watched what they're doing. But there's a lot of people who just won't have that self-critical evaluation of their work, and it's one of those skills I think you can get taught in some sort of career development or something. But when you look at what I do is I look at what I've done with my clients, and I think, well, is there anything else I could have done there? Possibly, is there anything I could do to make them better? And then I reevaluate like what I've done on old programs every year, and I just look back at it and think, if anything I know now, would I do the same? Would I do that program the same now? So like say from last July, if I looked at a program from last July or a diet from last July, and I go, what is that? Should I be doing that now? And if the answer is no, is if I should be changing that, or should be changing that, then I know I've sort of progressed and I've got my knowledge on. I do look back at stuff I've done 3 or 4 years ago and go, oh God, people pay me money for that. But then they did get results, so yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it?
But again, it's testament for you to actually look and actually take that step back and be critical, because I think the bodybuilding or any real sportsman should be looking for progression. And if bodybuilding is truly a sport like a lot of athletes think it is, and they get into coaching, they should also be able to take that step back, look at their own practice, and go, actually, am I doing a disservice or disjustice to my clients by still, if I'm preaching the same thing in 5 years' time, I'd probably be a little bit embarrassed. And I think me and Mike have probably always had the thing of, we find it hard to perhaps talk about nutrition in training because we don't make it sound sexy. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people in the gym. Like they'll, they won't come up to me and be like, oh, Steve, can you prep me? Because actually the only time I actually ever get that is literally when I'm near show and when I'm shredded. Like I have to be super peeled for people to come up to me and talk to me about, oh, how do I lose weight or whatever. Because I expect you've had a lot of people that come up to you in the past who've just said, oh, you've probably been the biggest guy in the gym. They'll come up to you, Tom, can you help me with my nutrition or my training? And you're in a great position where, you're very, very knowledgeable. But there's obviously a lot of people in other gyms who are probably going up to the biggest guy, asking them questions. And I'm sure there's also coaches who have, promise their clients or athletes certain things or quick fixes, and you're probably now having the same thing as us. It's so hard to sell basics like calories in, calories out, Get some sort of balance in the diet, some sort of moderate training program where you can continually see progress. So I just like to get your sort of view on that sort of thing, and what would you say to those people who are maybe teeter on the edge? And
it is difficult. It's funny to say that about your conditioning, because after the British last year, because I hadn't competed for 4 years, everyone at the gym knew I had done competitions, I suppose, but some of them didn't even know the trophies in the gym were mine. They just see me obviously at the gym looking big or not, and after I'd done the show, I was inundated with people saying, "Oh, Tom, can you prep me? Can you prep me?" And I was like, "Well, I've not really learned anything in the 6 weeks between doing the NABA West and then doing the British and getting that sort of recognition. So it is that visual thing of I looked the part, so now I obviously know what I'm doing. Whereas in the last 4 years I didn't, obviously, which was quite interesting that people applied that because I can get myself into condition. They wanted me to prep them, and obviously I did get a few good clients who I've still got now. But then the other side of it was I got a lot of people wanting me to prep them for free, which was, you can imagine my response for that.
Yeah, people. I think both of us get more sort of applications when we're leaner, and it like you went back before and you said about you would look for somebody who can sort of walk the walk, and whilst you obviously as a bodybuilder you want somebody who's going to be there to empathise when you are going through those potentially dark times and things. I think people are very, very quick to just judge people on a physique and only go on the physique. You mentioned looking for other sort of criteria when looking for a coach, which is fantastic. But people do just look at the guy who's in the best shape, who potentially has got better genetics, or maybe he's using who's not sort of out and is not honest about that. And people will just look for the people in better shape. And I know that I get more inquiries when I'm in better shape. Now in my off season, I put on like 24 kilos, and like I was pretty fat. And I got less inquiries than last year when I was shredded. Now, does that mean I'm a worse coach? No. In fact, I'm probably a better coach than I was last year, because I've had a year's worth of learning. I've had more experience with clients. But yet, people will look at me and go, well, he can't be a good coach. Do you know what I mean? It's that fine sort of balance between, doing yourself an injustice by getting maybe too out of shape that nobody wants to work with you.
It's ironic as well, because when you're actually in shape, the last thing you want to do is to talk to people about their diets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, my diet was hard today. I'm on low carbs, and your response is, I don't give a fuck. Go away.
Yeah.
I'm dieting myself.
It's like the worst is when you're on I'm on 200 grams of carbs a day at the moment. Client goes, Steve, really struggling to hit my carbs at 300. I'm like, you should be grateful, goddammit. You should be just like... I'm like, there is so many things I could do with that extra 100 grams of carbs, and you are just wasting them. Yeah.
They don't know what they've been given, do they?
Yeah, and that is the worst thing. But no, you are right, and it's an interesting one as well. And I couldn't, like I said, kind of off air, and I'm happy to say, if bodybuilders who are assisted and they're looking for a competition prep coach, Tom, I couldn't recommend you highly enough. Obviously, after training with yourself in a meal, we'll get a meal on at some point. I think he might be recording with us next week.
Okay.
So that would be good to sort of quiz him. But yeah, I saw some fantastic results. Just kind of the back end of my off season, it's starting to prep when I was training with you guys consistently, over at Ministry, and we're just doing some really simple exercises. But yeah, I saw some great progress. And after speaking to you, you certainly know your shit. I love your content on social media. So if people want to find out more about you, Tom, where can they get? How can they follow you? Where can they? Yeah.
Well, I got my Twitter is at MOFGym. My Instagram is at MOFGym. My Facebook is Tom MOFGym Blackman. There's a recurring trend here.
Yeah.
But I've also just launched my own nutrition consultancy, which is more not so much it's not aimed at bodybuilders. It's aimed at I suppose normal people, which is actually the vast majority of my business now is everyday people.
Yeah.
And that's BKM Nutrition, as in Blackman, but without all the other letters. I couldn't call it Blackman Nutrition because it didn't sound right. It just gave the wrong message, I think some people said to me. So I had to say BKM, but that's on Twitter as well as at BKM Nutrition. But yeah, but people want to contact me. I suppose the best thing at the moment is to either go through the gym website. They can contact me on info@mofgym.co.uk.
And if they want to watch prep, how do they do that?
It's www.preptheseries.co.uk. I think I always get that wrong. It's either .co.uk or .com.
Yeah, probably know that, mate. We'll put up a link anyway.
Yeah, I should probably know that because James Grealish is always telling me I should know these things.
It's on Vimeo as well.
Yeah, so if you follow that link on the website, it goes straight to the Vimeo site.
Yeah.
And then you can either download the episodes there to watch on your iPad or whatever, or we do have DVDs now because a lot of people were asking for DVDs. So we've done those as well. Nice. And yeah, there's loads of ways you can watch it if you did want to watch it.
So prep, just to give that a quick overview, is obviously yourself and Paul. If you had to give us a kind of a 5-minute synopsis of the documentary, what would it kind of be? What sort of things did you cover? And yeah, obviously you said you did it with Paul up to that NABBA show, but kind of what did that sort of documentary cover? Well,
we originally, the idea, I said to James, because me and Paul were going back on to competing, I said, look, I want to just do a DVD of me and Paul competing, that's it. And James was like, well, everyone's done that, so why didn't we run it as a series, which we update every month? So that's what we did. But the thing is about, I don't know if you or any of your listeners have ever watched bodybuilding DVDs where the guy goes training and blah, blah. I tell you what, it is boring as hell. Watching someone do endless sets of curls and, trying to talk in between when they're knackered and stuff like that. So we didn't focus on the training. There's a little bit of training in each episode, but generally the focus of the episodes are on the family life, stuff we do to get ready. So there's a bit on drugs, there's a bit on diuretics, a bit on everything else. Loads of different things that are involved with it. There's stuff about getting spray tan. I think Paul gets a DEXA scan as well. So there's lots of different things that go into it. But generally, the feedback we've had is why it was so popular with people is it was the human factor, and we had a lot of emails from like bodybuilders' girlfriends and wives saying they can relate to it because that's what they went through. In terms of me and Paul being absolute wankers to talk to and grumpy and not nice to live with and etc. etc. That was the biggest feedback we had, is how real it was. And I think a lot of people like the cardio rants as well. But we had to edit a lot of the stuff out of the cardio rants because it was too close to the nerve.
It was an interesting point you mentioned there, and it's something that I've always offered to my clients if they've wanted to. If I feel like there's a bit of a struggle at home with maybe partners not quite buying into what their other half is trying to do, because if you've got a partner which is just constantly resenting the process that you're going through during prep, I've seen it kind of firsthand as well. Although I think that I actually prep quite, I find it quite comfortable. I don't think it changes me too much apart from a little bit of messing up my words. I certainly become a little bit more stubborn and maybe a little bit sharper and less patient, less polite. But yeah, I'm sure there are people out there who suffer a lot worse than myself. I know you suffered really badly last year, didn't you, Mike?
Yeah.
And I think what would be some of the coping strategies that you may, obviously you've done a lot more preps, Tom. I'm sure you've worked with a lot of people who have also had those little struggles. I mean, I'm sure Paul will, be the same. What sort of things would you look at to kind of make family life or partners understand what you're trying to do or go through?
Well, it is difficult because I think the main difference between mine and Paul's prep was because I've got my own business. Although to a certain extent I've got to be at the gym and I've got to do my PT, and I can sort of make my own diary. Whereas Paul works for a company, he's all over the country driving around doing different stuff, and he's I couldn't do that. Living in hotels and only seeing his family on like the weekends and stuff like that. So it's very stressful for him, and he's got to obviously be more on point with his diet because he's got to go to like the shops and get stuff and he's got to hang stuff out of his window when he hasn't got a fridge in the evening. I think that's brilliant. But yeah, his prep was really hard, and I know it's in the series that it was tough for him and Jen, and it was tough for me and Nick as well. And I think the coping strategy that I involve is that I just tend to shut up more, because you tend, as you know and Mike knows, you tend to snap more when you're on diet, and I think you've got to understand that you are in that position where you're going to snap more, and things that would normally not wind you up all of a sudden just become the worst thing in the world. That is the be all and end all of all bad things. And I've had a stress because my oats didn't cook once, they didn't cook properly, and they come out of the microwave hard, and I literally tore it up in front of my girlfriend and threw it all over the wall. It wasn't, and she just walked out and went out for a few hours. But I remember just sit there on my sofa crying because my oats didn't cook properly. But I had no more food in the house. That was it. I just couldn't eat anything.
Oh, God.
So yeah, things become a lot more intense, and I think you've got to recognise that when you're on prep, and try not to snap at your partner. It is difficult, but try not to snap at them. But it doesn't help, of course, is that when you are dieting, if you've got legitimate annoyance or something, and you raise that as an issue with your girlfriend or your family or whatever, immediately that's the diet talking. You haven't got a legitimate point; it's the diet talking. And obviously, for me, it's the gear talking as well. I'm getting angry because I'm on gear. No, that situation has really pissed me off, and I want to talk about it. Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, you're on a no-win situation there. If you try and talk about your troubles, it's blamed on the diet. If you don't, you just get barked at.
So, Tom, I've got another question for you as well before we maybe call this an end point, because I know I've got to shoot off shortly, but and we've also been blabbing on for about an hour now. But what obviously bodybuilding, doing shows is becoming a lot more popular. There's a lot more federations out there now. There's a lot more classes out there, which is great for the sport. I personally think. I know there's a lot of kind of, and maybe you might have a different viewpoint on him. Feel free to share that. I see it from someone who, when I used to work at Volleyball England, the way that we would try and build up volleyball is to try and create more people at the bottom level. So by building up that foundation and grassroots level, there'll be more, who work up that tier or hierarchy of pyramid, so you've got more elite level players. So it does take more, not necessarily more federations, but certainly more beginners classes, more ways that people can compete, which is great. Popularity is increasing, but I think there's the trend of a lot of perhaps like old school bodybuilders don't like some of the new classes, like men's physique gets laughed at a little bit sometimes, is like the bikini class for men or whatever. Certainly fitness modeling as well, maybe, and there's always going to be things like that, but I just thought, what would be your view on how do we make bodybuilding a better sport than it is, more recognised, and is that the right approach by bringing in those classes which are maybe more attainable? What would be your viewpoint on that?
I think the main problem with the new classes is that it's perceived by many as a money-making exercise by the UKBFF, the IFBB really, and then it filters down to UKBFF. And I suppose in some respects there is that little bit of it is a money-making exercise, because if you look at the membership fees and what it costed, and now you have to pay to do individual shows, which you didn't have to do about 5 or 6 years ago. You paid your membership and you turned up to a show and did it. So now if you want to compete in men's physique, I might be wrong on this one, but you've got to pay like 40 quid for a 2-year membership and then a £10 entry fee for a show. So, it is perceived as a money-making exercise. That's the first issue. This is by the bodybuilders and, not the physique people. And then the second issue is that the bodybuilders, bodybuilding is a cult thing, and it's a cult sport. It always will be, aside from the natural side of things, it's what you might do, the sort of assisted Mr. Universe type bodybuilding, huge guys. It's always going to be a cult thing. And the people who do it are going to be extreme, and the people who are successful at it are going to be extreme in their views, maybe on training and stuff like that. So they don't like, in inverted commas, normal people with normal physiques coming in and muscling in on their shows, so to speak. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, well, why is he at my show? Because he just looks like every other guy in the gym, and he's got bloody shorts on with no legs, blah 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 blah. But I think it's quite good that you've got a class for people to come in and actually compete in who aren't, top end muscle monsters. It does make the sport more appealing. You get more spectators. So yeah, from a side of things, it is a money making thing because you get more spectators. But what bodybuilders maybe aren't getting is that their bodybuilding show is being kept alive by those classes.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might have 20 people in the physique class, but those entry forms and entry fees and everything else have possibly paid for the promoter to have a really nice venue.
Yeah, exactly. Why would that venue lease it out? They're not going to lease it out cheaper to a bodybuilding show with maybe 100 people watching when they could get, I don't know, like a musician or a band in there and sell it out to 300, right? There has to be that element of we've got to make some cash here to actually, make a profit. So, it can't just be run at a loss every time. So,
and go.
I was going to say, I think what's quite nice now is that there's those categories in. I've got this same mentality myself. I've obviously went from fitness modeling, which is kind of like the smallest of the classes, just because I had that fashion background before. And now I'm kind of going into men's physique because I've got a little bit more of a taper. I'm a bit bigger at the shoulder. But as I grow over the next few years, then, already my coach, Jeff, who we had on a few weeks ago, has been kind of encouraging me to do a bodybuilding show. And he said, just because of my proportions, symmetry, and my posing ability, that I might fare well. And I've always saw myself, well, I haven't earned my stripes yet to call myself a bodybuilder. I'm not big enough to be a bodybuilder, which I still think. I think, with a couple of years off season, I might be able to maybe go into that classic bodybuilding class maybe. So I think there's that nice progression up the ranks. So you don't just have to go straight in as a sort of super heavyweight as it might be.
Yeah, I think and if I forget the guy's name, but I'm pretty sure one of the pros in America started off as like a men's physique guy and is now a bodybuilder. I can't remember which guy it is, so, but I know there's that story of a few years ago he was a men's physique guy and a champion or whatever, and now he's actually in the bodybuilding ranks doing well in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a good feeder because you got to remember that to get the sort of bodybuilding size takes years and years and years, unless you're genetically, a super freak. So you've got to train for a long time to get that size to be able to go on stage and call yourself a bodybuilder. So what are you going to do in those years? It stands to reason you're going to have a for want of a better word, a lesser category where you've got people who are not as big physically, who haven't got the sort of muscle density or muscle maturity that you have in, a bodybuilder. But then those guys, they can compete, they can diet, they can train down and get into reasonable. Some physique guys, absolutely phenomenal condition, really good, even better than bodybuilders, and that teaches them over time to get in condition.
Yeah.
So I think long term, if those guys then progress up to bodybuilding, you will see hopefully a return to more conditioned bodybuilding. Whereas in the last couple of years, there has been a lot of guys who maybe just don't make the cut because they're chasing the size too much. But you see a lot of the physique guys, absolutely phenomenal condition. So, and I think that's a good thing for bodybuilding. It raises the bar a little bit.
Yeah. And it's funny, you ask most bodybuilders who their inspiration is, be like, it'll be Arnold or Frank Zane, and you look at those guys and they're not gigantic, but they've got great proportions, symmetry, posing, the whole package is there. And there's a lot of guys now who are in men's physique who are getting a lot more peeled and shredded than Frank Zane and Arnold were back then. So the standard is getting harder every single year. I know that this prep for me has been my easiest, and I've done nearly 5 or 6 shows now. I know that by being able to go to that position of competing, I get better as an athlete. I get to be able to cope with that better. It makes me a better coach as well. But ultimately, my bar is still raising. I know I look better than last year, but I'm still looking at myself thinking, oh, maybe I should be leaner, or maybe I should be in better condition. And as you alluded to, like the men's physique class, even the posing is much simpler. You know, having to put a full routine together in, you know, in a garment which literally just covers up your nothing. So then it is a little bit more appealing. Like, okay, yeah, I maybe could, you know, dip my toe in a little bit, do a men's physique show, see what it's all about, have some simple poses, get the, like you said, that experience, and hopefully the taste for a long-lasting career in bodybuilding. And that's, I think, what the sport needs more of.
I completely agree with that. But I think it is a fine line in the fact that there are potentially some people on stage who shouldn't be there competing, that they're just not developed enough. You know, they didn't perhaps get in condition. But I'm certainly grateful for these classes. Otherwise, it wouldn't have given me an experience that I've had and that I'm continuing to have, that I never. You know, if those physique classes weren't there, you know, like when Tom was beginning, he said that everybody was on gear and he perhaps maybe had to go down that route to be able to compete. You know, if these physique classes weren't there, I wouldn't have had the experiences that I've had, because I know that I wouldn't be able to compete against those guys or, you know, enter those classes. So for me, that, you know, I'm really, really grateful that these classes exist, and, you know, it's getting ever more popular. And yeah, hopefully, you know, I can maybe progress as my physique progresses over the years, but it's certainly a nice introduction into competing in terms of dieting and, you know, building on what you've got and changing your proportions and things like that. You know, whereas potentially if it was just right, you've got to go bodybuild, I may never have done it, I may never have had that experience, I may never have that empathy to coach anybody, you know, and, you know, I'm grateful for that.
I think it is. I think it's. You said about the posing routine as well. It's that's something again that's just lost now, I think, on a lot of people. It would be nice to see in physique an actual free posing sort of. I think they used to have something where you could come on and do like your own thing, but now actually I think they just said, oh, it's just these poses and that's it, and the T-walk.
Yeah.
It would be nice to see, because, you know, physique guys have still got a great upper body physique, even if the legs are cut off by the board shorts. It'd be nice to see some sort of, you know, upper body routine, because you know, the main thing about physique is watching it is so boring. You just get 30 guys with blue shorts on, and I don't know why everyone wears blue. That's, you know, for me, if that was me, I'd just be right, I'm gonna have green or red or something, or not blue. But everyone turns up in blue, so they all look the same, and then they all do the same walk, and they just all look the same. And at least with like the bodybuilding, you've got some degree of artistic flair with being able to do a posing routine, and you know, to some degree choose the colour of your posing trunks, which is, you know, not a great option. But I think that in the men's physique, the problem with it, and a lot of why bodybuilders don't like it, is because it's perceived as very, very boring to watch 30 people do the same thing, and it just takes up so much time in a show. They could do so much more with that class if they allowed them a bit of free reign in terms of artistic license.
Yeah, it's one of those as well. Like, I obviously was, when I first saw it and I saw the board shorts, I was like, oh, that's such a shame. And for me, like, my legs are probably one of my stronger attributes when I am on stage. It's probably the only part of my body which has a little bit of muscle on. So it's a shame for me to cover them up. But, you know, a lot of guys, I think, who are young in their training age, their upper bodies just are more developed than their legs, because they haven't been able to push that intensity to the same level as their upper body. I think a lot of the guys that I, you know, coach myself, their legs are always their lagging body part, and they could have a phenomenal upper body, ripped, shredded, you know, vascular abs, but their legs are probably going to need a few more off seasons until they kind of catch up to that level. But, you know, and I can kind of see like both sides of it, but I think you're right. I mean, I like the routine part of it, but there's a lot of people who don't, isn't there? And that's what they're probably just trying to appeal to the masses, and that's probably why it's there.
I suppose so. Like I say, it's just the main thing about going to a bodybuilding show now and watching a physique. It's just so boring, and I mean, when I watch bodybuilding shows sometimes, and I'm a bodybuilder, so I should be enjoying bodybuilding. But you know, if the guys haven't made any effort with their posing or even their posing routine, There's nothing worse than watching a guy who hasn't made any effort in his posing routine muddle his way through like a proper retard, trying to do poses and not hit them right, and looking like he's shitting himself because he can't hold the pose. That is almost cringy. It's like watching David Brent do bodybuilding.
Oh, amazing. I would love that.
Tom, I went to the Arnold's, not this year, the year before in Melbourne, and I was really lucky enough to see Tony Freeman compete on stage. And Dexter Jackson, and like their posing routines were absolutely unbelievable, and it was like the first time I've ever been that close, because I managed to get very good tickets in the pre-judging, and then later on in the evening I saw it again with all the lights and everything, and it was a really great spectacle. And I had a spare ticket, so I invited a friend, and he was like, I'm not really into it, and he came and he absolutely loved it and was completely like just inspired actually. Although he liked lifting training, but he wasn't really into bodybuilding shows. You can really see that appreciation of that artistic talent that has obviously gone into that time and dedication into putting a well-crafted routine together from those guys, because they're phenomenal at what they do.
It's part of the entertainment thing. It's years ago I actually won a best presentation or best pose, I suppose, trophy at the Portsmouth. And I don't know if that was because my routine was that good or everyone else's was pretty crap, but I was quite pleased to get that. Like, it was a reward for putting effort into my routine, which I always put a lot of effort into my routine. Yeah. And I just don't understand why people don't, apart from the fact that you don't get marked on the routine. Everyone goes, oh, you don't get marked on it, so why bother doing it? Well, to show off what you've got and to show. I mean, that's the only point of the show. You actually get to show you, as in your personality and what you're about, and people don't take advantage of it.
No, Tom, that's exactly it. And I think the more we can get that into the sport and encourage people to work on their posing and take some pride in what they do and not just moan about it on social media, because ultimately they're putting themselves through it. No one's forcing them to compete. But I think, taking some pride in what people do, I think is really important to help the sport progress. But Tom, we'll leave it there, buddy. Thanks so much for coming on. Obviously, we've already done all the social media links. I'll put those out. Mike will get those out in our daily email as well. So all of our subscribers to that will get access to where they can follow you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
But no, thank you so much. And I'm sure now, obviously, you've had a little one and you're probably back to some training. I can hopefully get over to Ministry, and looking forward to a good off-season over at Ministry as well. So, we'll be seeing you soon, mate.
Get Mike down as well to hold our towels.
Yeah.
I've been down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've spoke to you, but I was about 20 kilos heavier, so you probably don't recognise me.
You didn't recognise him either, Tom.
I'm not very good with faces. I'm really bad at that.
Especially when
it's an embarrassment.
Especially when I was full on carb face as well, so I don't blame you, mate.
Well, I didn't even recognise my cousin once when he comes into the gym.
Fucking hell.
I hadn't seen him for about 10 years, and he come in, and I was like, I'm sure I know you. Who are you? And then it sort of clicked in my head, but I'm really bad with faces. It's not good at all. That's why I call everyone mate, because I can't remember the names. So that's bad, isn't it? Maybe cut that bit out.
Yeah, no, we'll keep that in. That's good entertainment, mate. But anyway, Tom, thanks so much, buddy. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot, mate. Cheers.